Is this the one, Venerable?
Yes, thank you, Nana.
Thank you.
It's on page 34, I think, or 35, one of the two. Hey, I'm welcome. Come on in.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're just reading some prayers. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate our own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. And then page 98 for the refuge prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Thank you. All right. I don't know everybody's name. That just irritates me. I'm Tendron. You're Retta. Victoria. Sharon. Debbie. Nope. Steve. Roy. Jack. Barry. Maggie. Meg. And John. Okay. And then home we have Nana and her red bandana. And Chris. And Melissa, Victoria, and Gabby. All right. So what's on your mind? Debbie, you have a question from the book this week? I rely on Debbie for reading the text. No. You could come up with, how about you, Greta?
I didn't do much reading.
Yeah.
Did a little in the parking lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember those days. We have 5 weeks, I think, left. So until a new teacher arrives. So so how do we end up in samsara? Well, okay, specifically, it's on page 87, I believe. Of course, it depends on which version you have.
Craving.
What's stronger than craving? Grasping.
What's that?
Grasping. So craving gives rise to, I want it now. So we grasp after it. Okay. Those are the final 2 states of mind that arise before we die and we're reborn. And so they set the stage for what karmic seed ripens for the next birth. So, and how does it start? This little 12 links of dependent arising. What's the first?
Doesn't start.
Well, it repeats. It repeats. So if you looked at the chapter, I'm picking on you now. The first link is Ignorant. Yeah. Okay. So it is through our misunderstanding of how things exist, that we create actions that are distorted. So the second link, karmic formations, that's what they're talking about. You do an act, karma's action. You do an action. Don't ask me about the translation of formations. They translate this so many different ways. But basically, you do something, and when you do something, whether it's a mental or, verbal or physical, it plants a seed in your mind stream, and none of this is physical. So they use physical terminology so we can picture it, but it's really just, like sometimes I use the word imprint, like putting the footprint on your mind stream. This, first of all, can develop a habit, so you place an imprint of anger, say, or impatience, that arises, you've placed a little extra, another little grain of sand into the mind stream. And then if you do something like speak harshly to someone, then you've got another seed, and that will ripen as someone speaking harshly to you in the future. Because it'll have that kind of result. We create, cause and effect are related. They're congruent. So when things happen to us, it really is quite straightforward to think, oh, I must have done this in the past, and our habits that are really prominent, we probably did it earlier today, or last week. Other ones haven't practiced so much in this life, so we're meeting a condition we don't often meet, but a habit arises, and we strengthen that habit, by reacting out of these habits, that energy that just says, oh, this happens, you do this. So this is why pausing, whenever, the more we observe what's going on in our mind, the more we can go, pause. First of all, you want to just notice. And then you might notice that when this kind of state of mind arises, this kind of action follows. And maybe that's not a good plan. So you think about that a little bit, So you're running late, and suddenly, everybody's evil who's driving on the road, getting in your way, and that's just a habit of mind.
And is it, I think it's in the book, this ignorance is the root delusion, so that it's subtle and I guess the hardest to get, like, because the persistent sense of like I'm driving,
Yep.
like you wouldn't get attached unless that was first there, right? Like
Well, it's the whole idea that we perceive ourselves as separate from everything else. We have this false sense of separation. We don't see ourselves as interdependent. We see ourselves as independent. In fact, we strive for it, all through, when we're little, and then we hit those teenage years, and then I'm sorry, I'm independent. We really strive for independence. And there's some good reasons for that. It's not, like nuts. It's just that it comes from this same idea that somehow we're separate and we're self-sufficient. And that's a mistake in how actually we exist.
Is it the baby's fault if the baby wants to drink their mom's milk?
It's nobody's fault. None of this is fault. Our habit of thinking about blame and fault is not Buddhist. It's just not even part of the deal. But like what?
The baby's just gonna keep wanting that milk.
Yeah, because the baby is going to survive, and it's an instinctual thing. So as long as we're born on a planet and we're born out of the womb and we're born in this way, this is what we'll do as far as survival. Okay, but there's something different about thinking that, at first babies think they're one with their mom. They don't actually have that mistaken idea that they're separate. But then at some point they recognize that they're separate, physically. So, and then all sorts of trouble happens. Then we go mine. And what follows with mine? Not yours. Then we start seeing these things in this kind of division. Conflict arises. Mine. Paul has my toy. Tell him to give them back. My brother one time glued everything in my room down.
Glued?
Yeah, glued. Like I had a little blackboard, the eraser was glued to the blackboard.
Like really strong.
Not well, I mean, strong enough to hold it, but he said he tried to glue my bed down, but that was pointless. I got even, only I got in more trouble because I wasn't as clever as he was, which is really how it worked. I poured ink all over his desk. I got in a lot bigger trouble because that doesn't wash off. Oops. But the point is we start having, conflict arises from a very early age. And this is coming from this idea that somehow we're not this shared group. There really is an us and them kind of thing. And why that's important is because we have to take care of this in order to have happiness and everything else that goes with it. With children, it's happiness. Adults, it's wealth and prestige and, whatever it is. My family. So we take care of our needs first, my needs first.
I'm thinking that the baby is born, oh no, wait, the baby's not born innocent. Baby brought the consciousness from before. That's
Yep.
why the baby is. Because I was thinking,
Baby brings its own habits.
because I was thinking, how else is a baby gonna,
You can't.
it can't.
And guess what? That means that shows you just how interdependent we are. We can't even survive without people taking care of us for quite a long time. We're not like other animals that can get by pretty quickly. So human beings really take a while. Now we probably take longer than we need to. So, but it takes a while. But the truth is we can never do it alone. And that's one of the mistakes we make. We really do think, that there's an answer in being able to make sure you can take care of everything yourself. What does that cause? What is a consequence of that way of thinking? I'm sorry,
You said an answer of thinking you can.
what's the kind of result? What kind of thing does that create?
Loneliness?
Well, it can create loneliness. I don't need anybody. Certainly can create selfishness. I can't help you because I need to take care of myself.
Indifference.
Indifference. We don't look around to see if somebody else needs help. Yeah, self-centered, definitely self-centered. It is all because of this mistaken idea that we have to take care of this body. And we ignore the fact that the truth is we've never done it alone. That if we really want to survive, we need to cooperate with others. Yeah, we don't learn this lesson well. And hence samsara keeps coming.
Can you make anybody cooperate?
Nope. And part of it is because we don't know how. The reality is usually when we're trying to make someone cooperate, we have an agenda. We don't know how to listen to their needs, really listen without sitting there thinking, I've got a solution for this, I've got a solution for this, I've got a solution for this. No, we're ahead of the cooperation game. You know, we've already got an answer for someone else.
You
And
just need to stop talking so you can.
yeah, but you know, yeah, if they just shut up, I can solve their life's problems. You know,
Our agenda doesn't.
match yours.
ours, we get angry.
Well, we think, or we just set up a story that somehow they don't get it. You know, I'm so sorry for you, because if you just would get it, you know, everything would be better.
Sometimes I feel like that though.
Yeah, sometimes it feels true. And sometimes it may be true. It's not that we don't have ideas about how somebody else will be better, but do we do we implement all our good ideas for ourselves? No. So why do we expect somebody else to do it? It's not even their idea.
That's for the best.
Well, work on you first. When you're at your best, then maybe you can lead someone else. See, that's one of our problems. I know what's best for you.
I'm specifically talking about like a parenting circumstance.
Yeah, children you have a special responsibility for your children. You know, we still can't make them. You know, we have to watch them suffer. That sucks. But it's true. That's part of the sacrifice of parenting, is that you can't protect your children from suffering. You can help try to protect them from harm, but only up to a certain point. You can't even do that, right? They still get hit by cars when they run across the street. My best friend died that way when I was little. You know, parents can't stop that. You know, you can't stop them from making bad decisions about, you know, their careers. And the truth is, we don't even know if they're bad decisions, because, you know, we're basing it on our own experience, our own life, a good theory, perhaps, all that stuff. But you never know how things are going to work out. And if you look at your own life and you look back about the horrible things that have happened and what you learned from them and how some of those things actually change your life for the better, you know, you never know how it's going to work out. All you can do is be there, you know, to be supportive, you know, when things fall apart, if they fall apart. But yeah, I mean, as parents, you try to help your kids learn skills that will help them get along with others, will help them function in the world. And that's our responsibility as parents. I mean, I think that's part of the job. But there's a point at which, from the very beginning, you cannot protect them from suffering, because they have their own karma. They get sick. You know? Yeah.
Is it wrong to think that this is okay because they'll be more resilient? Like, I don't want my kids to suffer, but
It's part of life.
they have divorced parents who can't get along.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And boy, is that a part of life. I mean, you know, it's like joining the club. I mean, you know, this is not a big deal this day and age. Unfortunate, because but I don't know. The world's always been a mess. So I don't think parents that stayed together were necessarily worked out very well. So, you know, we just don't have the whole, you know, we don't have to be attached to views. When we think we know best, we're grasping at a view. Now, hoping that something will make someone more resilient, there's nothing wrong with that hope. Expecting them to become more resilient is not fair. That's when we're just putting our agenda onto someone else. And, you know, we can't know how it's going to work out. You know, it's like we don't set our kids up to suffer just to teach them a lesson. Yeah, I mean, some parents do that, but that's not a good plan. You know, so we need to be much more able to go, okay, what am I grasping at? What am I, you know, so that we can really listen to what the other person is saying. What am I grasping at? So we can kind of set that aside and try to see the situation fresh. And this isn't easy to do. Not to mention that we're, under the influence of ignorance and all of our habits of negative, ways of thinking. But this is why it's so important to be kind. Kind to yourself, kind to others. Nobody knows what they're doing. And so having compassion, hearing someone tell a story and you can just see how it's going to play out, and you just have compassion. Because this has also happened to you. You've made those kind of choices. We also can't provide our children with a perfect world. Samsara. It's the nature of suffering. So it isn't about trying to be the perfect parent either, because there's no such thing. Modeling for our children that there's no such thing, it can be a helpful thing to model, rather than the all-knowing one. Everybody have parents like, because I said so. But sometimes you have to do that. I mean, sometimes, depending on the age of the child, sometimes you just say, because I said so. That's the way it is. They don't have, families are not democracies. Thank goodness, because we're not doing so great at it as adults. It's not even by consensus, unless you just call the adults in the room the consensus on things. I don't necessarily get a vote. And that seems harsh, but they don't have the skills until later. And hopefully you're teaching them, giving them conditions to develop those skills. You don't make all the decisions for them. You don't pick out what they wear. You gradually lead them to being able to understand how to make choices, how to do things, how to fit in the society, to a point, But just like they don't know what they're doing, we don't either. So let's not pretend that there's some magical state. And that thought, when we have that thought, it's like, let's listen to me. That doesn't help. It might not even be true.
And I think about all the books that were written on how to parent.
Yeah.
And those people didn't know either. And then we went according to that book.
Yeah. And we do it now with social media. And I see all sorts of good things that come out. I watch my niece, raise her kids, with social media. And she had really good support system, and it, and it was very interesting. But you have to use your own judgment. You just don't follow anybody. Yeah.
Some of my only friends, throughout significant portions of my life, have been online only friends.
Yeah.
Who live far away.
Yeah. That happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, thank goodness you found some. This is the thing. Is just like when I think about, my years in high school that were a drag, we didn't have anything like that to turn to. I turned to books, and I'm still a big reader. I just read books. That's all I did in the summer. I was so grateful for the summer reading list. But it's, it's just, but life's hard, and we can't protect our children from that. We can just try to help them have some skills to deal with it. And one of those things is showing them how we deal with it. It's hard work, and it's painful work. And then there's all these joys as well, So
It's hard
there's
for
just a big
everybody.
gap in between those joys.
Hard for everybody. Everybody has their own trouble.
Everybody has their own trouble. Absolutely.
We should use.
And kind to ourselves and kind to each other. And and we don't have to be, obviously, when you're in the role of parenting, you have to also recognize when you're having idiot compassion. When you're giving somebody what they want just because, you can't deal with it. Who are you really being kind to? Yourself. Who are you being selfish towards? The child. This is so we have to, be aware of that. And we're going to make that mistake as well. People do it in relationships, not just with children. They do it with their partner. We all get, but we need to keep thinking about the fact that we're coming from an incorrect point of view to begin with. That we think the world exists a certain way, and it does not. And frankly, I think you can just look at society and see that it's nuts. It doesn't take a lot, it's not that we don't have good qualities as human beings, but as a society, we're kind of nuts, It's like, sometimes I can't get over what we spend our money on, and I'm equally guilty of it. And Sharon was helping me pack up some boxes, and I had all these things that were like brand new in a box. Never opened. COVID was hit my pocketbook hard. I'm bored. Oh, we'll just see what's online, and I pretend like I'm going to cook someday. Yeah.
I work as a cashier in Home Depot.
Right.
I had a pretty extraordinary experience last weekend where, it was the Pro line where the contractors come in, and there's not necessarily like a specific lane.
Right.
So I had these two guys fighting over who was to go next.
Yeah.
They were and then one of them said, okay, fine, I'm supposed to go next, but I'll let you go next.
Because I'm
I
a
said-
nice
And I
guy.
said, okay, why don't you go next? He says, well, no, because I'm supposed to go next. And they were yelling at each other. I was trying to say, okay, gentlemen, let's, you can discuss this afterward, because there are other people waiting, let's just, but I mean, the temperature was so hot.
Yeah.
It was just,
I've been one of those people.
What's that?
I've been one of those people.
We all have.
We all have, as you say, yeah. But I think that my experience in these classes helped me
Yes.
to be present and to, even though I was getting like, come on, guys, like, stop it, but to just stay present and try to
Yeah.
de-escalate,
Yeah.
but it was.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? And we know, and it doesn't tell us a thing about either one of them.
Like the general public acts so weird.
We all do it. We're all one of those people sometimes. And we have no idea what's going on with them, what happened right before they got there, why they're in a hurry to get home. We have no idea what's going on for them, what their financial situation's like, anything, and it's just like how much sleep they got last night. All of those things affect the way we react, and being able to be kind, not having a great day, right? I mean, I'll watch these guys. One of my neighbors is getting windows on their porch today. And this truck comes to the thing, and it's on the second floor. And I'm watching him come up, and he's looking at the situation, realizing, no, I can't get right up against the building because there are little bushes and, little things. And do they have scaffolding? No, And he was so hot. He threw his flashlight into the truck and it bounced around. And, he was just frustrated. And of course, it started to rain eventually. I got completely drenched, and so did they. So it's, but they did get the windows in, but it's just, we just, if we can just hold people in our hearts, just going, yeah, I've had days like that. I understand, hope it gets easier, because they're not having fun. They're not doing it for sport. They're miserable.
One thing that really sunk in for me last time, when you were talking about purpose and intention, and it kind of transformed my whole way looking at things and what I thought I wanted it. And that's kind of another story, which I will amazingly hold myself back from right now. But what I'm thinking about in this term is that my my purpose in that job is to give everybody the most positive experience of shopping in the store.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, that's what, like what kept me there is knowing that like I'm here to serve,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's what kind of, it's just sort of like you said, became almost an instinct.
Yeah, if we set that intention, if we go, okay, I'm going into work, it is in my best interest that the company succeeds, and it's my opportunity. It's part of the way I participate in helping the world go around. So these are things that we can do actively every day to help ourselves, not have an expectation from others, because that's where we trip up. When we sit there thinking, oh, these guys should behave better than that, and I shouldn't have to put up with this, I'm just standing here trying to do my job, and here these idiots are just, foaming at the mouth, and other people are waiting, and now other people get mad, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you can go that route. And I mean, some days we do that, right? But it's like, if we can just remember that we are not separate from these people that we're struggling with in that particular moment. We have the karma to be at the same place, the same time. There's a reason for that.
You have to make headway on questioning your attachments and aversion responses before you could realize that the I is false. Like,
No.
you do them at the same time. Right?
You can do it at the same time. Because the reason why you can do it at the same time is that beyond ignorance, negative states of mind don't help us. Right away, if we lessen our negative states of mind, we have a better day. So we don't have to realize emptiness in order to have a better day. We have to realize emptiness to get liberated from samsara. But we just, but we have intelligence, we have some wisdom, we can look at what we're doing and go, is that working for me? So, and to be honest about our own behavior, we have to be honest when we're the person that's being impatient, or we're being the jerk, or whatever it is, or we're grasping at our view, and wanting someone else to just understand it. We do all those things. We have to be honest with ourselves and kind. We have to go, oh, okay, so I'm one of those, people like everybody else on the planet. So it's like, we don't have to feel bad about where we are at this moment, but we can want to try to do it differently. If we want to have more peace, less reactivity, that's what you need to do. But you don't need wisdom first. It's just, it's a process.
What did you just say?
You don't need wisdom first. You don't have to have this brilliant insight into how things actually are in order to work on your behavior and your speech.
That's because that's how attention is. Like, you don't need wisdom. That's kind of a wisdom, but it's not as conscious a wisdom. Kind of practice.
Well, and there are all kinds of wisdom. The wisdom of understanding impermanence, the wisdom of understanding death, the wisdom of understanding greed, wisdom of understanding love and compassion, the wisdom of understanding generosity, and then there's the wisdom of understanding how things actually exist. The beauty of that one is it takes all those negative attitudes and it has no foundation anymore, it just crumbles to dust. So we definitely want to aim for that, but that's not where we start. No, it's just, we have to start with just, we get along a little better today. What you think, brother?
I was thinking about fairness and if it's wrong to try and level the playing field sometimes.
Oh, well, it would depend on what you mean by leveling the playing field. I was into, big time into, but it's unfair. Of course, karma says everything's fair. You're getting more, you set up the cause and you're
Right.
getting the result. So, that's not what it's about. But samsara is not fair in the sense of, we don't get to, it's not linear. So what ripens? Who knows?
And I just feel like, where's justice?
It's in us. It's up to us to develop a system of justice. It's up to us to implement it. It's up to us to have a voice for it. But it doesn't happen by itself. Not everybody sees justice the same way. So it's complex. It's not as complex as we make it, but it's still complex. It's not simple. When I listen to the guys, out in the manufacturing towns that have all lost their manufacturing jobs because all the industries have closed down years ago or whatever, talking about how wonderful it is that Trump's doing these tariffs because, we really need to build these plants again, I hear that, I don't think they're correct in the solution, but I don't think that's fair that their jobs were just suddenly moved to some other country, and they were all left holding, dirt. And it's complicated to run a country. World economy is not simple. Economists really don't know what they're doing. So, but but it doesn't mean we just sit back. I was looking today at the news where they were talking about how the food bank in one of the food banks in Washington, D.C., 600,000 meals are not being delivered because of all this stuff. So their warehouse is empty. And it's like, so, caring about the people who, have lost their jobs of late and there's no sustenance for them, that's very difficult. So how we used to see, I'm sure it still exists, but I remember the news, when you'd see all these places where goods had been sent to some country that stuff, having a problem with famine, and it just stays on the port rotting. Now it's us. So those boats out there where they're not going to deliver the goods because of the tariffs.
It's funny, when you were talking about that, the thought that came up is like, God, Trump is so insensitive to these people, right? And then I started like making it wrong. And then I was thinking about, well, if he could only see, like we were talking about before, if he could only see things the right way.
No attachment of view there.
Yeah, well, we're saying things, we're saying like, God, if
Yeah.
there's some way to convince him, but that's.
Well, how do you teach a billionaire what it's like to start?
Well, that's what we were talking about before. Well, he's got his
Go
top
to the
level.
Burning Man Festival.
Oh, yeah, well, there you go.
I wonder
Especially
what he-
when the weather's bad. Yeah.
You were talking about how he bought a top level Tesla and he lets his White House staff drive around.
Yeah, I know. It's like a Hot Wheels track in the Rose Garden. But the point is, it isn't simple to create fairness and all that stuff. And it isn't, some things you go, well, this isn't rocket science, it's easy to figure out. But every decision has huge consequences.
What I was trying to say with that is how what we learned before helped me like recenter myself. Helped me to that realization.
And that's the most important job we've got. You may not think so, but if we can take care of our minds so that we don't just become angry and yell at the news or, and write angry, ugly letters, and blah, 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 whatever it is, we can imagine.
I know my reaction came out of that separation.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
We need to understand that first we have to repair our own hearts and minds so that we can see others as part of the same group. They have different experiences. We can think they're completely wrong in their decisions. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we have a tendency to hate them for it. How can you be so cruel and insensitive and stupid and whatever, and this is a problem. It's like they talk a lot, whether it's true or not, about Trump getting revenge on people who opposed him in the past. That's what that mind leads to. If we carry on that mind, that's what we're leading to. Ooh, I can't wait till they get theirs. We don't want that mind. So it's because it's not going to solve anything, is it? Because that's what we're doing now. We're going around and around, having the same fights and the same everything with all these people, the same people, since beginningless time.
Until they turn 18.
Yeah. And then they start their own fights with their own, this is the thing. And it's not an accident that you have your children. That's karma as well. Venerable Robina likes to talk about how the fact that she didn't have a lot of strong karma with her family, but they get together once a year and they get along now. The fact that she's in her 70s has nothing to do with it. Yeah.
I actually was curious, because I come from a different background of learning. And so I wanted to know what other religions say, be fruitful and multiply.
Mhm.
And I looked at Buddhism, and there's just like, no, if anything, that just like kind of makes you more distracted.
Yeah.
But
Nothing wrong with having kids. The Tibetans certainly want to have kids, since they're being wiped out of their own country. But, it's really about this understanding that survival in samsara isn't the point. We're going to survive. What we would like to do is learn how to not be stuck in samsara. And it's not about getting mad at people for not doing the right thing. Is
it okay to be frustrated? That they're
it's
not
okay to be whatever you are. It's just that happiness isn't there. Solutions aren't there. Solutions come from a place of calm and kind of allowing them new ideas to bubble up. That doesn't come from anger. There's no wisdom present when anger is present. But it's, it might kickstart the process, but it's a matter of just recognizing bitching about it, sitting here bitching about it is not going to change anything. Finding out what's being done and getting involved might change something.
When we were talking about taking care of our own minds, I was just seeing the other day how much like the mind, when my nephew didn't call me back, so I got a look and disappointment, and then so I was looking at that, and then a few hours later he did call, and I felt soothed, and then just like the whole day that Comcast stopped working, and I didn't have to call.
Yeah, we
them.
flip-flop.
Can't read, and it just like it could just go on and on now.
It does. That's since beginningless time. That's what we've been doing. We've been letting our happiness and suffering be totally determined by external stuff. Oh, I'm not getting what I want. Oh, I thought that's what I wanted. Now I don't want it. It's just constant, as opposed to going, how can I stay even? How can I not be reactive? How can I just okay, this is what is. You know? You know, it doesn't mean we don't do things in order to not repeat that. You know, it's just that we can't stop suffering from arising because we've done stuff that created the cause for it.
And to interrupt it, like, like when you, like when I got that disappointment, you know, you go all the way back, just to, you know, how to like, just stay peaceful.
Stay peaceful and maybe wish that he's having a good time.
Yeah, and then so like, when he did call, like, oh, okay, yeah, oh, okay, I'm white, you know, don't look at this praise, and it's like.
Yeah, it's
like-
just absurd.
It's like the other side of it.
Yeah, it's sort of like, you know, oh, if he only knew how upset I get when they don't return my call, then they'd call because I know they care about me. You know, well, if you just didn't get upset and understood that, you know, everybody has a life and, you know, and also, you know, sometimes we just don't have strong karma with people or the karma changes. You know, I mean, you know, that person you were wild about before the divorce, you know, gone, you know. You know, but we can interact with each other in meaningful ways, you know, with, you know, genuine care and concern, you know, and just, you know, kindness.
And that's how to be happy.
And that's the easiest way to, you know, be happy in any given moment. And that creates a cause for happiness.
Yeah, I just told somebody today I'm just so tired of taking the high road. And like I'm kind. And he's not, and he's not, he's not.
Yeah, but yeah, and so, you know, walk away, walk
What do I
away,
do?
walk away.
You know?
You can't do anything about how someone responds. And we shouldn't see our kindness as the price you pay. No, you're kind because you want to be a kind person.
I do.
Yeah, so they may not. That's the we have zero control over how other people respond to us. And we don't have to feel judged by that. So that's one of the mistakes we make. We think that somehow their unkindness says something about us, and it doesn't. It says something about them. You know, and it's just, you know, and so it's just like, you know, being able to find that place within yourself that is confident that the choices you're making are the right ones for you as best as you know. And not worrying about whether anybody else gets that, you know, and everybody's going to suffer. This is trouble with breaking up of families. You know, we suffer, but we suffer anyway. The world is hard. Life is hard. You know, it's not, you know, we can't create this perfect little place for the kids to feel safe and, you know, and it just doesn't happen like that. You know, that's why samsara is suffering, the nature of suffering. But we don't have to add suffering on top of it. Things fall apart. We don't have to say, well, in what way did I fail? Sure, we want to check up on our behavior and kind of decide, okay, I probably need to abandon that behavior. But, you know, it's not, that's just, everything is impermanent. When you look at your relationships in your life, how many of your childhood friends are your friends now?
None.
None.
Most of them are dead.
Well, that's the next phase.
Sister has all her child.
Yeah, you know, I did when I was growing up because I lived in the same town and went to the same school for a long, long, long time. And then we all lived in the same town for a while, but then you move away. I moved, so, you know, those friends aren't there. You know, but we twist ourselves into knots when we think somehow we should be able to make this work out better. as if you're in charge of the whole show, and you're not. You can only take care of your part, and you just take care of your be responsible for your own actions of body, speech, and mind. And that's all you can do. You can't prevent anybody else being hurt by other people, I mean, it's just, this is the deal. You can do your best, but you can't do it all. And this kind of pain is part of the deal. There's nothing in samsara for us. We can enjoy, what there is to enjoy, but it won't last. So we shouldn't get attached. I'm sorry for your troubles.
I just miss my kids.
Yeah. Well, it's really tough when you,
Am I not supposed to be attached to them?
no, you are supposed to be attached to them. That's another great sacrifice of parents. Of course you're attached to them. Yeah. And these are the kind of pains you may have for the rest of your life. And there's just, but you just keep doing sane things for yourself, and don't hold on to the idea this will never change. Yeah. Big hugs to yourself.
Thanks.
And we don't expect these things. Not that we should be sitting around expecting it, but I find that grief it's shocking how much it hurts. It's just shocking. And nobody really prepares us for the fact that we have to live through it. It's the loss of relationships is, whether it's through death, through life, through whatever, it's really challenging. And so to remind ourselves, if I don't want to repeat this experience, I'm not going to hate anyone here because I'll meet them again. So, it's like, oh, I don't want to repeat this, but it's just, and you just keep loving your children and doing the best you can in your circumstance and trying to figure out how to live with the limitations on what you're able to do. Accepting that that's the way it is right now. And sending out kindness to all the people going through it. For any numbers of reasons. It's just separation from people we love is really difficult. We have, there are literally hundreds of thousands of people experiencing that every day. That alone should remind us of how we need to comfort ourselves. We need to understand how to be gentle with ourselves, have self-compassion, because it really is hard. It's not our imagination that life is hard. And we can get caught up in the trap of thinking, well, it wouldn't be hard if it was fair. Or getting, we do that. We have these ideas that, well, people just act like a sane person. It would, but that's not it. We can't prevent loss. It's set up like that. So we just work on our minds so we're not creating the cause for the future. And we don't sit there and punish ourselves because that this is our cause and effect coming around. Because it's not like that. It's ignorance that starts it all off. We don't know what we're doing and we're learning. So we just have to, certainly if I created the cause for this, I'm not doing that again. So we try to figure out, okay, I'm never separating children from their parents, It's this kind of thing, because when you hear these horrible stories, think about children trafficking and all this kind of stuff, and we like to think, never would I do that. Maybe it's in your past. That doesn't make us bad, irrevocably bad. It's that it shows the depths of our desperation to try to figure out how to get what we need. And people have been pushed to places that we can't even imagine being pushed towards, and they're born into circumstances we cannot imagine, with such disregard to life, their own as well as others, but they exist all over the world. And until we understand that we're all in this together, so we need to take care of each other everywhere, it will have those situations. So they're no throwaway people. When we face situations like this is not the person facing it, not Retta. The rest of us, this is that, this understanding that this is true suffering. That because sometimes we really kind of shrug it off as no big deal, the kind of suffering we experience, and then, let's just, you go out and have some fun, just forget about it, But this is the truth of suffering. And this is why we want to work on our minds. This is a way out of the truth of suffering. The Buddha didn't tell us to think about suffering because it's the reality. No, he said because there's a way out. So you need to understand the truth of suffering and you need to understand the origins. And then you need to understand it can stop. And there's a way out. You know, a long process. Because it's all about reshaping our mental training. You know, and so understanding that things, aren't what they appear to be. Like it's so strange when, you know, so you meet some of these teachers, these lamas who have a lot more realizations, you know, and they'll start laughing at the funniest times, you know, and you're kind of going, okay, you know, and it's like I've told you about Don Brown, who was the founder of the center in North Carolina, was talking to Rinpoche how he's kind of nervous about taking one of those little planes from Nepal to India or something, you know. Oh, kind of, and he just started laughing. He goes, Don, you do know you're gonna die. So why worry? You know, out of your control. You don't have to get on the plane, but trust me, you'll still die. You know, maybe not from a plane crash, but you know, that it's, and of course, according to the Buddha, all of it's unnecessary. It is all arising out of ignorance. That's the foundation for all our grasping and all that attachment and suffering and aversion and attachment to view and blah, 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 or aversion to view. I have a lot of that lately. You know, it's all based on misunderstanding how we exist. And when we finally have that understanding directly, it all falls apart. We're not involved in this kind of existence. You know, it doesn't, we're living a different kind of life. Now we may be in this life helping others, but we're not experiencing life the way that people stuck in samsara are. So it's, you know, it can be helpful not to forget that part. You know, this is a whole view. It's not just about, you know, today. It's about understanding that if we work on our minds, keep working on our minds, keep working on our actions, keep letting go of whatever we're holding on so tightly to, and keep trying to think about how the self exists or doesn't exist, you know, it will be dismantled. The suffering will end. Yeah.
The line in the book that it says something like, we share the same common delusion, so we're in
This,
like an absurd, like it's a tragedy, but it's also the source of laughter and what makes it.
well, because it's totally unnecessary. One of our problems is we grasp after thinking that things have to exist this way, the way they're appearing to me, and they do not. We're creating a story, you know, we've written our own tragedies. And we can learn to correct that. It's just that it's not fun being stuck in samsara. You know, so we need kindness and compassion. Yeah.
So would you say you suffer less? Was
Oh,
that
I
the word?
definitely. Oh, there's
'Cause
no
like,
doubt about it.
yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's just no doubt about it. It doesn't mean there aren't moments that I suffer just as much as I ever did, but they don't last as long. You know, it's like, because I have a different understanding. Like when my father died, and when, you know, it was very different than when my mother died. Now, granted, he died at a much more reasonable age than she did. But, you know, it's sort of that if the understanding that he's fine. If the Buddhist teachings are correct, he's gone to his next life. You know, I don't have to worry about it. I'll meet him again, hopefully with a much better kind of beginning. You know, but, you know, that's okay. That he's not in my life, it's my loss. But it's not like he doesn't have a life. You know, it's just that it doesn't look like anything that, you know, I would know him. You know. wherever he's born, because he's already born. So,
When you gain omniscience, then
then I'll know. Yeah. And there won't be any sense of loss. There won't have been anything lost. That's so hard for us to imagine.
Yeah.
It really is. It's really hard for us to imagine that all of this is all based on a misunderstanding how we exist. That's it. It's totally unnecessary, And when you see teachers who kind of seem to know that, not just, speculate, it's like they have an ease about them that's you could almost feel. It's just they don't worry. It's like, okay. Like Lama Zopa, falling in the river as a 2-year-old or something. And, oh, the person known as so-and-so is about to die. No attachment to, this label, this life, whatever. He didn't die, but,
well, eventually you did.
yeah, eventually he did. And I suspect he wasn't worried then either.
Going on how, so this is like really hard to grasp sometimes. I think people learn differently, and for me, I'm kind of visual. Are there any movies or anything that kind of helps explain?
Well, you can watch movies like Kundun about how His Holiness was found. And it's just kind of a nice story, it's a little different. I do think there are, reading books that are inspirational, less than, academic, but still have, they're true to the Dharma. So it's, can be helpful just to see that you really can look at this life from a different angle, so it just depends, you just start looking at biographies, some of them, people will pull off a book off the shelf and kind of go, oh, not this one. Because it varies, so we just have to, but it's like I was listening to a podcast of this woman, Marty Beck, but she's done this work with anxiety, and she's just a joyful person to listen to, and I listen to a lot of Sounds True podcast because I hate my daily walk and makes it much better. So yes, it's but I mean, I think that we need feeling like, there are people out there who clearly have gotten some peace for the moment and they're doing better. And it's nice to hear their stories. It helps. Yeah.
What I was gonna add was, maybe from the FBMT, think like the basics of Buddhism or some of those that are offered that are on video. They actually have something. on video.
Yeah, they have the
And
teachings
so,
on video.
like in the beginning, you'll see Richard Gere actually talking and explaining some of.
Okay, thank you.
Might as well have eye candy while you're looking.
Hey, why not?
Lama Zopa Rinpoche watched one of his movies because he just wanted to know if there was any Dharma in it. And so here he is with these. And so I knew some of the nuns that happened to have to watch it. Pretty woman with a and she said it was so painful. And at the end of it, he goes, "No Dharma, oh well." So see, that's the thing. There are people that they're coming from at the world from a completely different orientation. Just and things don't it wasn't like he got fussed about it. Just curious. And even Lama Zopa Rinpoche gets curious, so, but it's very helpful. I mean, I read a lot of Dharma and I find it really helpful. Like your book about, Ajahn Brahm, I mean, they're fun and and it still hits it hits the money on, how our crazy thinking is a whole big part of our suffering. But Yes, our delusion, but going beyond that is just because of our delusions, we have some real hurts. And so having to deal with that, remains challenging until we've had some realizations. Like I can't imagine what a realization of impermanence is like. Where you don't have a conceptual understanding of it, but where you have a direct perception of impermanence. I'll have those electron microns go by suddenly. But it's just weird to think about the fact that, what we see clearly isn't what's there. We see this kind of interesting picture that isn't representative at all of what's happening. Because we see these static bodies that we can move ourselves, we're articulated. But there's so much more motion than that. There's so much more space than that. It's just so weird, And that's just a function of our organs, what we're capable of seeing. Pretty wild. Then you meet someone who has that thing where senses cross over. So we have this understanding. People
Where
who
they hear colors.
Yep. And then you really have to kind of go, okay. Yeah, well, there we go. So I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's we have such a small view. And that's due to our ignorance. So that's something to look forward to. Just as we keep widening our view, it gets lighter. Because amongst all of this true suffering, we see our capacity for enlightenment. Because that's also happening. All the kindness and the generosity and the patience and the ability of people to really be present for someone else. All these kinds of things are happening all the time also, and we should be encouraged by that. And so every moment that we have one of those moments where we're just really present for someone else, it's a really happy thing. It's a really good thing. And that happens all the time. It's just, we let it. It's there opportunities for it. Sometimes we just have to allow ourselves to, like you sit on the bench and you actually watch people. Like I love watching people at Century Village, all these, fairly elderly people hold hands as they walk around the grounds. It's just so nice. I can't tell you, I mean, almost all of them do it. Like that's amazing. Well,
It's a little disturbing.
yeah, because you're young.
Well, I was at Disney World.
Well, yeah, that's just disturbing. But it's really interesting that if you have to like look for that, we forget to look for how we do interact well
With the helper, like Mr. Rogers.
Yeah. And just the fact that we can actually enjoy moments. We have that capacity, and they don't have to be profound. It's just, and it usually involves sharing. People like to be connected. People like to have, it's that we're very social. And we have a false sense of separation. So anyway. All righty. Let's rejoice in our efforts. Thank you for sharing, Retta. I know it's not easy to share either. It's tough. Couples. No, thank you, Nana. So page 234. or 235 or something. What page is it? The dedication prayers? Yes, 235. All right. So we said this merit, the first line, due to these merits. So we want to rejoice in our efforts. That's what that positive effort is merit. And that will ripen as something good. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may we quickly attain the state of Guru Buddhas and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Just as the brave Manjushri and Samantabhadra too realize things as they are, I too dedicate all these merits in the best way that I may follow their perfect example. And then page 241. Because of all the merits of the 3 times created by us and all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and other sentient beings, may there be no wars, famines, disease, quarreling, fighting, or unhappy minds. May there be great prosperity, and may everything needed be easily obtained. May all the human beings in the world be guided by spiritual leaders teaching only Dharma, and may everyone enjoy the happiness of Dharma. May everyone have perfect conditions and have only compassion and love for each other in their mind streams. And may they only benefit and never harm each other. And then page 244, I think, for his long life prayer of His Holiness. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Shinrei Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And then, Nana, do you know where the Miksei Mei prayer? 245. Thank you. So we'll follow His Holiness's advice. Miksema is the praise of Lama Tsongkhapa. So we'll read it in English first, since you don't have a clue what it is. So we'll start there. So, and this is the thought of Lama Tsongkhapa being all these beings. Avalokitesvara, great treasure of non-objectifying compassion. Manjushri, master of stainless wisdom. Vajrapani, destroyer of the entire host of Maras. Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows. To Lozan Drapa at your feet, I make request. Avalokitesvara, great treasure of non-objectifying compassion. Manjushri, master of stainless wisdom. Vajrapani, destroyer of the entire host of Maras. Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows. To Lozan Drapa at your feet, I make request. Avalokitesvara, great treasure of non-objectifying compassion. Manjushri, master of stainless wisdom. Vajrapani, destroyer of the entire host of Maras. Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows. To Lozan Drapa at your feet, I make request. So we're saying that, and His Holiness recommended that in terms of looking for the reincarnation of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Apparently is living in Nepal.
Wait,
He's been, well, His Holiness sent out a message saying that Rinpoche has been, his reincarnation is been,
So all the more reason to go on this pilgrimage to Nepal.
no kidding. I would agree with that. So, you know,
he's back.
he's back.
Oh, good boss. The prayers work.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, you know, and this would be a time I'd skip and just be a child again for another 20 years before you have to get stuck with teaching. Oh. Anyway, okay. Thank you guys. Medicine Buddha Puja Saturday night. You, if you can, you know,
My kids will be here just for the weekend.
so yes, enjoy.
I will.
Yes,
I should have a
Just-
whole week, but whatever.
but yeah, life is like that, isn't
We have a
it?
2-week break.
You know,
He
you,
gets the first week, I get the whole second week. But
Hey.
no, I only get a weekend.
I'm
So, yeah.
sorry.
That's okay. But thank you for listening.
You can, contact me anytime if you
you.
need to
Thank
Yeah.
you.
talk more.
Thank you for your sharing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Okay, over here, 'cause I won't give you a-
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And a little tender.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think I want to share.
Then we'll get more.
Laugh.
Yeah.
Loki Teshvara, because my name is Loki, so I
Ah,
thought, oh, wait, maybe I'm in there.
yeah, yes, yes.
What I wanted to share, what I was referring to before is that
Krishna.